Welcome to Murray's Minis. I'm Will, and today I'm going to be showing you how to convert a Space Marine Reaver squad into a kill team for either the Wolfspear or the Space Wolves chapters. So grab yourself a coffee and we'll get started. So I decided to use the Librarian in Phobos armor as the Reaver Sergeant. So this will be the primary model that we work on today. So you're going to be needing plastic glue, a pair of cutters, nice sharp scalpel, and a nail file. These are really good, really useful stuff actually. I use them for most of my projects. So after I've cleaned the tabs, you see you've got the tubes, which is kind of like the hallmark of a lot of Space Marine Librarian characters. These needed to be taken off. So I took them off bit by bit, removing the material ever so slightly, and just do it very, very gently because you don't want to take off too much and then be left with deep scars within your model. Because the original miniature is a Librarian, I had to cut off the psychic hood just so it didn't give the wrong impression that this was a psychic character when it needs to be a Reaver. So once again, I'm using the nail files, which are a nice cheap piece of kit. You can get them off Amazon for a couple of quid, and they're really essential. If you're trying to get a nice flat surface, I find them so much easier to use than using a diamond file. So I'm just removing it bit by bit, trying to get a flat and level surface, just to not give the impression that this guy is a Librarian. Now I'm just gluing the two parts of the model together, and we're going to set it aside and work on the close combat weapon of the miniature. Now, because this is the Wolfspear chapter, I thought I'd give them all spears. So next I'm removing the sword from the Librarian model. I'm trying to keep this cut nice and even and level, so when we add the replacement weapon it will fit in there nice and easy. There's lots of flash in there where the hilt of the sword was connected to the handle. When it comes to clipping off the sword, because the finger is very, very close to the hilt of the sword, we need to just cut it off bit by bit and make sure that we're not taking off the finger. I'm also going back with the nail file just to clean up the area where the sword was. See, there's quite a lot of dirty scarring by there. And I'm also going to take off the Librarian symbol that is on the glove of the Marine. I'm just doing some final cleanup of the part, as when we put the weapon on it's going to be a lot more difficult to clean it up and get rid of all of those flashing marks and the mould lines. So we're going to get it nice and clean before we try to attach the spear on. Now this is one part where you want to be very, very careful. I mark out the centre point of where I'm going to drill with my knife, and I mark it up with my file, and you want to take gentle cuts, drilling gently. Try to make sure you stay in the correct position, nice and centre and central of the hand. I took a Bretonnian men-at-arms spear because I thought the end point of the spears looked nice and jagged, looked quite brutal and quite in-fitting with the Wolfspear's chapter. So I'm filing down the ends of the cuts to make them nice and flat and level, and to also give us a good point for us to drill into. Now, once again, this is a very, very delicate part, so you can use a knife like before. This time I opted to just mark the centre point with my pin drill. This technique probably took the most time out of the entire conversion, because you just have to be nice and straight, take your time with it and make sure you're nice and level. This technique took the most time because you need to make sure it's nice and level and you don't drill for the side of the shaft. Because trust me, there's nothing worse than spending all that time drilling it into a spear and your drill comes through the side of the spear, because it's just really disheartening to go through all that work and mess it up. So take your time with this step. You've got all the time in the world. So now we've got the hole in the hand and the shaft of the spear. Do a dry fit, just make sure it all goes in okay, that the fit is nice and snug, but you've got enough room for a good dollop of super glue in there. Also, at this point, I cleaned it up, but I also noticed that there wasn't quite enough space within that drill hole to get a good fit. You don't need to drill all the way through the shaft of the spear, but you want a decent enough hole in order for it to fit snugly and securely in there. So just a quick dollop of super glue, fit it in there. It's always good to do multiple dry fits at this stage as well. So you want to get the length of the piece of paper clip right, just so it's a good fit. At this stage, I actually made a massive misstep in that I decided to glue the close combat weapon arm to the model before I was finished. If you're going to do a lot more cuts, a lot more converting, especially with non-standard parts, leave your gluing until the end, because this arm came off about 3 times and I had to re-glue it over and over again. At this stage, I took a reaver arm and did lots of cuts to try and get it to fit into the socket of the Librarian, because it was a non-standard socket, so it took a lot of finicky removal, lots of little cuts, little chops with my clippers. This also took quite a fair amount out of time. But with these types of fits, just do little bits of removing material, little bit by little bit, and just keep on dry fitting. But once you get it right and you get it to fit in snug, there's no better feeling than getting a non-standard part into a bit of a finicky hole, because as you can see, the arm fits lovely. It really brings the pose together and it looks really, really good. So for the head of this particular model, I chose one of the heads from the Forge World Spaceballs upgrade kits for the 30k army. Those are absolutely fantastic conversion kits. I've bought tons of them. I use them on pretty much on all of my Spaceballs models, because those are the best Spaceballs heads. Absolutely going. One, because they actually have fangs. So at this point, I took a chest piece from the Spaceballs plastic kit, and I wanted to add one of those belts from those kits to this particular model, because the base model itself doesn't look particularly Space Wolfy. Although there's lots of levers, there's the fantastic leather trench coat on that model. I just thought it could do with that little extra wolfiness. So this probably took this little bit of converting probably took the second longest out of all of it, because there was so much material on that chest piece to remove because of the ball and socket joint where the hips meet the legs from the plastic kit. There was a lot of dry fitting involved, but I did also make a lot of mistakes in this stage that I didn't follow my own advice here, and I kept on trying to glue it down before I'd removed all of the material that I needed. I tried to bend it on the handle of my files, and in the end I just had to keep on removing material until it would sit flush. Which is a good lesson here, is to just keep on removing bit by bit, slowly. And it was at this point that I'd blunted my blade, needed to swap it out. And I don't know if you'll see it on the camera, but I managed to jab the end of my finger with my blade about 5 or 6 times. So this model is indeed caked with my blood. I think all decent conversions do actually require somewhat of a blood sacrifice. And so I'm trying to glue it on again. Once again, not following my own advice. It's sitting a lot better than it was, but it just was not fitting quite well. So it was at this point that I was still having to remove more and more material from this piece. And so just keep on removing bits. I actually tried to glue it on again, which was a bit silly. Sometimes it can actually help, because the plastic glue will soften that material when you're trying to shave it down, so you're not cutting through hot plastic, through rigid plastic, you're actually cutting through melted plastic. It can make it a bit easier sometimes. But it was at this point that I'd realised that I'd removed material from the belt, but no material from the actual model itself. So I had to take the belt off again and then remove the belt buckle on the actual Librarian Marine itself. And this was sort of like the final piece that meant that that Space Marine belt fit nice and snug and just looked perfectly right on that model. But with these sorts of conversions, it's just lots of trial and error, lots of dry fitting, and just take it slowly, because it's better to remove material bit by bit, nice and slowly, rather than to just chomp through it with your clippers and take off tons of material and end up ruining the part that you're trying to use. But you can see here it fits nice and well, and you wouldn't notice that it's not actually a part of the original model. But you can see that the arm's coming off, and I'm going to need to reglue that again. Yeah. So if you are doing these types of conversions, my advice would be do your work on the primary body first, get that looking absolutely right, because you're going to be manipulating the model a lot. You're going to be twisting and turning it and moving it around, and you're going to be knocking stuff off. So at this point I added some knives and pouches just to cover up some of the scarring from where I cut parts off of the model. This is always a good opportunity just to add bits and bobs, just to cover up some maybe of your less clean cuts. I also decided to give all of the kill team these badges from the Wolfspear plastic kit. These are got so many nice bits in it for conversions. It's really worth picking up that kit if you are going to do some Space Wolves or Wolfspear conversions. I use tons of bits from that kit. So using the same techniques as before, these are some of the other members of the kill team. I decided to give two of the other members close combat weapons, a shoulder pad from the Resin Forge World upgrade kit. And it gives a lot of these Marines really, really interesting poses. They look very, very dynamic. The spears are really, really in keeping with what I wanted to do with this kill team. And it really kind of brings it home that these are not quite just Space Wolves. This was the most pretentious model I think I've ever made ever, but I absolutely had to do it. The hand is from the Wolfspear kit, and I thought about using the leather mask from the Forge World upgrade kit to kind of hide the idea that this Marine is going through the change and becoming more feral. Also added two guys with bolt carbines just to give some variation into the squad. So there you go, that's how you can make a Space Wolves / Wolfspear kill team using reavers, a few bits from Wolfspear box set, Forge World upgrade kits, and a couple of other kits. I know there are lots of different bits and bobs within this Kern version, but it's always worthwhile going through those Space Wolf parts and kits, because there are so many fantastic little bits that you can use just to add a little bit of flavour to those conversions. So the Wolfspear decal sheets aren't actually out yet, so these models won't be painted until I get my hands on that copy of White Dwarf. I believe that's coming out on the 17th of September. I cannot wait for it, just so I can get these models painted, and those will be coming up in a future video as soon as I get the decals ready, as soon as I get my stuff sorted. So I'm really, really looking forward to getting that video out to you guys. So we'll see you next time. I've got another project which may or may not involve a Steam Train AT-AT for a Mechanicus conversion that is absolute insanity, but I can't wait to show that to you guys once it's all done. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell button, and consider supporting the channel on Patreon. Thank you very much, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.